Out Live starts with some breaking news as the Jets have found their new head coach. Adam Schefter, what's going on?
Well, Laura, Aaron Glenn is going to be the new head coach of the Jets, the organization that drafted him in the first round, where he became a scout, worked in the personnel department, now has hired him as the head coach. He was in the building yesterday, went home to Detroit last night, but the two sides were able to reach agreement today, bringing Glenn to New York. The Jets still need a general manager. They're going through their second round of interviews there, but the priority for this organization was getting a man as respected, as well-liked, as accomplished as Aaron Glenn. The roots he has with the organization are an added bonus. And if you speak to the people in Detroit who played for Aaron Glenn, who are around Aaron Glenn, the only surprise is that this day didn't come any sooner. The New York Jets have their new head coach, Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, it's well said, Adam. He's certainly very respected around the league, and we'll dive into much more of this throughout the show with your breaking news. But Aaron Glenn and the Jets certainly have their work cut out for them. Okay, the Jets haven't made the playoffs since 2010. That's the longest active drought in the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL. New York hasn't won the AFC since 2002. They haven't had a top 10 scoring offense since 2008. And their last 4,000-yard passer was Joe Namath back in 1967. As we welcome you into the show, Dan Orlovsky. Hawk J-Mac is here. I know.
That's great.
That was kind of a negative Nelly way to start. But anyway, it leads to what Aaron Glenn has signed up for here, right? So, Dan, do you like this move for the Jets?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, the past couple of years, he's been a part of an incredible rebuild, in Detroit. So that's needed in New York. There's actually a really good spot with Peter Schrager and Kevin Clark, and talking about Peter Schrager's, just the reports about some of the interactions he's had with people about Aaron Glenn. Sean Payton has long lauded Aaron Glenn and praised him. Anytime Sean Payton's praising you, that's a good thing. I think the two questions are, who's going to be the general manager that comes along with them, and then what is his plan, if at all, with Aaron Rodgers, and that's going to be really interesting to see over the next couple days.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the hire. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Been in the locker room with Aaron Glenn he was a coach, and obviously I was a player. And the way that the players gravitate to him. For a head coach, your job is three things: to prepare your players, motivate your players, and manage the game and throughout the season. When you look at the job he's done with the Lions defense this year, he's done just that. For them to have as many injuries as they have and then continue to figure out ways to fill those voids and find those blind spots. And even on the defensive backfield side, the seasons that Branch is having, Joseph had, I mean, there's a direct correlation to the fact that Aaron Glenn is the one running that defense.
Yeah, and you look at the Jets defense and some of the pieces that they have, especially with Sauce Gardner on the outside. They have guys, Michael Carter in the slot, that can cover, that he can bring that defense along with him. I think to your point, Dan, you start to wonder, all right, you got your head coach, you're going to get a general manager, obviously, and you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. It's that quarterback position because Robert Saleh is leaving this team, and he was a defensive-minded guy who brought a tough mindset.
He came with like a good reputation.
And came with a great reputation, and you feel like you're repeating it, and that's nothing against Aaron Glenn because to your point, I've heard nothing but tremendous things about him. But you wonder if you're a Jets fan, you're like, all right, well, what's our plan going to be on offense? Who's going to be the guy calling the plays and who's going to be the quarterback moving forward? But you have to be fired up about this hire with everything that people are saying about Aaron Glenn.
Just a reminder, Aaron Rodgers has said he's still trying to figure out what's going on. He was waiting to find out who the head coach would be, waiting to see how this would all play out. But who should be the quarterback for the Jets?
Well, I think they have to entertain Aaron Rodgers, and that's a little bit dependent on who the head coach is. But Aaron Rodgers, the last 7 or 8 weeks of the season, did play winning football though after he got healthy. So, they're not in a situation where they're going to draft somebody early on. But you also have to have the plan for the future. So even if you decide we want Aaron back, you do have to entertain some young quarterback relatively early in the draft that you can at least say this young man's got some potential and he's not ready to play right now, but the development of their future and their future guy has to be a big deal.
Yeah, Hawk, you're familiar with him in a locker room. Obviously, there were many players that were not happy with the way that the Jets season was going, the way that it ended. How can he get their trust? How can he sort of get their buy-in?
Yeah, he has to be himself. And the good part about Aaron Glenn is that he's been in those shoes, not just as a player. This is a born and bred Jets football player. He's literally been in that locker room in those shoes. And so I think his ability to relate to the players, but also come with a plan that people can buy into, that's what it's all about. When Saleh got fired, there were people in that locker room who were upset because they bought into the future that Saleh painted them. They bought in to the strategy to turn this place around. And so I think Aaron Glenn, the similarities will be there, and it's necessary to make sure that players buy in to what he's selling.
And I do think it's really important organizationally to have the patience that the family in Detroit had.
Yeah.
You know, Dan Campbell was, what, 1-9 or something midway through his second season, and it was like, fire him, you all stink, and all of a sudden. So I do think, you know, if he gets Lance Newmark, who's rumored to be the potential general manager, attached with him, if you get those two guys that were part of it, and that the family that owns the New York Jets, the Johnson family, is capable of having some patience, because it's not like a tear-it-down rebuild.
Yeah.
But it is a decent rebuild coming off of what's happened over the last 2 years.
Middle ground rebuild. Jets fans do not want to hear this. They're like, we've been rebuilding for a while. But all right, let's see about this. Jets legend Joe Namath was excited about this Aaron Glenn hire. He took to Twitter right as the news broke, tweeting, "I'm hoping all Jets fans are as thrilled as my family and I are that Aaron Glenn is our new head coach. I wish the season would start next week." So you get a ringing endorsement from
You better
Joe
find
Namath.
a quarterback. I mean, think about it, just the division. You got Josh, McDermott, Bean. You have in New England a new start with Vrabel, but you know, Drake May and Tua and Mike McDaniel are still formidable. So it's like you got to find a quarterback to have any shot.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
No, you said it when you mentioned getting that buy-in. If you're a player in the locker room, just show me how to win. Like, you don't have to tell me anything else, all of the hoopla and all of that. Show me how to win. The last 2 minutes of the game, make those decisions that are going to put us in the best position to win football games, and you got me.
And he did that with the Lions. On the Lions side of things, Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, now the Bears head coach. Now we knew this was going to happen, right, that Aaron Glenn would get a head job. How does this affect them?
Well, you look at it, and you just said we knew this was going to happen. You got to imagine Dan Campbell, for the last few seasons, has been planning, knowing that Ben Johnson was getting head coaching interviews. Aaron Glenn's name has been mentioned as a head coach. You have to, you think about it all the time as a head coach. How do I develop my players? I draft a guy in year 1. What does he look like in year 4? I think you have to have the same approach when it comes to coaching. I have these coordinators, but who's my quarterback coach? Who's my DB coach? Who's the next guy in line? When these guys take and they move on and they become head coaches, I have to have somebody ready to step into that role and somebody else to pick up the slack.
Dan Campbell painted a vision that Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn did an incredible job of reiterating to their guys. He's going to have to fill those voids. When you talk about from a player perspective, and also it ties to the Jets conversation, look at what he's done for the Detroit Lions defensive players. They played at their best, which is going to put them in position to continue to make the most out of their careers, both on the field and off the field monetarily.
It's interesting. Maybe that roadmap is already there, thanks to Aaron Glenn and probably Dan Campbell in a lot of ways, too. We're just getting started on NFL Live. A lot of news to get to today, so don't go anywhere. The Commanders and Eagles face off for a third time this season as we get you ready for championship weekend. Hawk is going to tell you why Jayden Daniels and his receivers should attack Philly's defense. That's next. Plus, could this be another historic Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen rematch? We've got reports from both teams. You don't want to miss also what both quarterbacks have to say. They spoke today about this matchup. That's next, right here on ESPN. Brock Purdy was at the Eagles 31-7 in the 2022 season. The previous 5 all lost, so we've never seen a rookie quarterback start a Super Bowl. Well, here's Jayden Daniels talking about the matchup this week.